Let's take a quick look at the ongoing trial going on between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Before I get into this, I'll just make everybody aware that if you want to check out some of the content that's on our website, you can check out this article that I wrote. I think it's a premium one, all the way back in November, talking about how Hollywood does not care about justice, because as we all know, Hollywood is very quick to throw people under the bus if they're not going with the prevailing societal winds, and also if they're not towing the correct activist line, and how that's all basically a mirage so that they can cover up the fact that they're all a bunch of degenerates and oftentimes paedophiles or best friends with paedophiles. So if you want to learn more about that, check out that article. Let's get into this. So many of you will be aware of the situation that's been ongoing between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp for the past few years. I believe their relationship started in 2015, and it wasn't that long afterwards that the trouble started, at least the public-facing trouble. I've got this article from BBC, which is actually quite useful in going through some of the information to make everything relevant and catch everyone up to speed who maybe isn't aware of what's been going on. So the sequel to Johnny Depp and ex-wife Amber Heard's bitter legal battle has come to Virginia after losing the first round, which was a libel trial set in the UK, where Depp, 58, sued Heard, 35, for, the new trial is him suing her for $50 million over an opinion editorial piece she wrote in the Washington Post, in which she claimed to be a victim of domestic abuse, which he's alleging is implying that he was the one domestically abusing her. Probably also the fact that she tried to come out afterwards and say that he domestically abused her as well had something to do with that. Whereas Heard has sued back with a $100 million counterclaim against Depp. So this is massively escalating. It's going to be one of those things where all the dirty laundry of their relationship is about to come out in the public.
It seems like they've got more than most, to be fair.
It really does, especially if you listen to the audio recordings that got released a few years ago, and I will be going through a few of the transcripts of that.
Still seems like a better wife than Jada Smith, though.
I suppose so. If you want to make that argument, you go for it.
Not particularly.
Josh just got a thing for crazy, apparently.
No, I'm joking.
So the defamation trial is expected to feature painful accusations of domestic abuse, and that's coming from both sides. It's being broadcast live, and it will involve a number of high-profile witnesses, including James Franco, Paul Bettany, and possibly even Elon Musk.
I don't know how he comes into all of this.
Well, supposedly back in 2020, Musk was going out with Amber Heard.
Oh, right.
So I assume he would be a potential character witness if they bring him in, if he can, take time away from bullying Twitter. And Godspeed to you, Musk, for doing so. Depp and Heard started dating in early 2012 after meeting on the set of The Rum Diary a few years earlier. By 2015...
Good film, by the way.
I've not watched it. But by 2015, they were married, but just 15 months after they made it official, it was over. Heard filed for divorce and a restraining order, appearing in a Los Angeles court with a bruised cheek. She said her then-husband, 23 years her senior, had violently attacked her and thrown a mobile phone at her face with extreme force. There were other alleged instances of harassment as well, excessive emotional, verbal and physical abuse, she wrote in the court filings, angry, hostile, humiliating and threatening assaults. Depp denied the abuse. A judge granted Heard a temporary restraining order, but hours before a civil trial order, the order was to begin, she and the Pirates of the Caribbean star released a joint statement saying they put their dispute to rest. Evidently not, it seems. Depp gave Heard $7 million as part of their divorce settlement, which she pledged to donate to the American Civil Liberties Union, something Depp's team now disputes. That's right, Amber Heard, champion of civil liberties. But yeah, so the reason that this is relatively important is the fact that when all of this went on was at the height of the Me Too accusations. I think, in fact, it may have been a precursor to it, where what is being alleged to Amber Heard is that she was trying to big up her own profile in a way to try to get better roles for herself, which, after this all happened, she did. She got one of the co-star roles in the film Aquaman, which I've not watched, but which did make a lot of money. And what this trial is basically going to show is it's going to show the truth, and then if the truth is that Johnny Depp is in the right here, we're going to see in a similar way to the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, whether the public law system that we currently have is going to actually provide justice for someone who has been wronged, or if it's going to side itself on the side of someone who's done some very bad things by the sounds of it. And talking about those very bad things, this is the audio recording that got leaked a few years ago. It was a September 2015 audio recording. I'm not going to play any of it because it's really long. It would have taken ages to find the clips, but we've got a transcript here of some of the more important stuff. It's taken from a recording on September 26th, 2015. This was originally released as part of the original libel case that Johnny Depp had against The Sun a few years ago for smearing him, which sadly he did lose because they just outright on a front page, I think they just said that he was a wife beater, didn't they? Which he had some disputes with, shockingly enough. But Amber's reason for recording the conversations that she said was that Johnny and I regularly recorded our conversations during our relationship. As I said in my third witness statement, recording conversations started as part of our relationship therapy in order to help us communicate more effectively. They were also a tool to remind Johnny of what he would do when using drugs and alcohol because he would not remember or would deny what he had said. I wanted to show Johnny what he was capable of to help him with his recovery. This is disputed by Johnny Depp, who himself says that the reason was that really in our relationship, as you progress and start to know one another, conversations happen, and then later when you refer to the conversation to that other person, which would have been Ms. Heard, she would say something very different from what we had talked about before. It was radically different. So I, at the time, thought that the best thing to do was to record the conversation, so retrieved my telephone and brought it to where we were talking, and I said, I'm going to record this conversation just so she knew I wanted to be out in the open. So I could then later reference the tape if once again her words later did not match what I knew they were, what she had said on the recording. So he's basically just saying that she was gaslighting him the whole time, and he wanted recorded proof of what she was saying so that he could say, no, this is what you actually did say, you can't just gaslight me again. And here's some of the things that were recorded on the conversation which are not pleasant. So during the second hour of the recorded conversation, Amber said that she got physical and out of control. I can't promise you that I'll be perfect. I can't promise you I won't get physical again. God, I effing sometimes get so mad I lose it. That's the difference between me and you. You're an effing baby. Johnny, because you start physical fights, because you're a baby, grow the F up. Because you start physical fights, I did start a physical fight, and that's Amber saying that. Yeah, you did, so I had to get the F out of here. So it doesn't sound like a rosy marriage, and we actually do have, on recording, her admitting to starting physical fights with Johnny Depp, which doesn't sound great. I don't understand how, when you've got that sort of evidence, he lost that original trial against The Sun. But this is I've also got the opinion piece, which was released with the Washington Post back in 2018, which is what the current lawsuit is going against that Johnny Depp is saying is libel, defamation even. So she said, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath, and this had to change.
Even she, in lots of her other things, didn't say it was sexual violence. She just said violence, like domestic violence. It wasn't...
Well, that's very interesting. Her big contention with the whole lawsuit is saying, well, I never named him. But it's like, well, you've just come out of this very messy relationship where you've had a lot of very public issues with one another. You come out to the divorce hearings with a visible bruise on your face, and then you come out with this article saying sexual violence is what you've been speaking up against. So it kind of paints a picture, whether or not you're naming Johnny Depp, it paints a picture that he sexually abused you, whether that was intended or not, which could be, as they're attempting to do, legally defined as defamation. And I'll just read a few excerpts from this. So she says at the beginning, I was exposed to abuse at a very young age. I knew certain things early on without ever having to be told. I knew that men have the power physically, socially, and financially, and that a lot of institutions support that arrangement. I knew this long before I had the words to articulate it, and I bet you learned it young too. So if Amber did legitimately go through abuse at a very young age, I'm sorry to hear that, but if that is what's happened, whatever comes out in this trial, it doesn't justify negative behaviour onwards from that point, does it?
I'm kind of struck by the fact that she's written this and she's basically tried to tie it in with an ongoing debate. This was what, 2018?
Yeah.
So it's like the Me Too stuff, and it seems like she's tried to tie something in which doesn't necessarily fit, and it all seems very manipulative. The fact she's bringing it into the public eye, I don't know. My intuition, although I can't say anything definitively, is that she's basically just trying to destroy him as much as possible, and perhaps trying to manipulate the media and what...
I mean, judging by the leaked recordings, it definitely came across that way in those. And yeah, it is interesting that she's trying to position herself as kind of a figurehead of the cultural movement while also painting herself as a victim in all of this, which, once again, depending on what happens in the trial, could turn out to be the case. I doubt that this trial is going to leave either of them looking particularly great, to be perfectly honest.
No, that it's a mudslinging match where they're both basically going to lose, I think. I think there's no doubt about that.
But it's whether it'll kind of, for me at least, it depends on, right, who initiated all of this in the first place and who was the actual aggressor in a lot of these situations, which will be interesting to find out. Let's move on to the next article. So let's talk about some of the stuff that's actually been said in the trial so far. At the time of recording, I believe we're on either day 1 or 2, so I've not got that much information. I've not really been keeping up with it that much. I just thought it'd be interesting to cover. So if you want more coverage of this, let me know. If not, there are other channels such as Rakita Law who are covering the trial in depth, watching the trial on live streams all day, every day, as long as it's going on. So you can check them out if we don't end up covering any more of this. So this one is Johnny Depp's neighbour claims that Amber didn't have any marks on her face after the alleged 2016 incident. And I would assume that would be the incident where he supposedly threw his phone at her face. Johnny Depp's childhood pal told the court how Amber Heard told him the actor hit her, but then he saw no marks on her face. He later saw a picture on the internet of her bruised face. So he was recalling an incident in May 2016. A Mr. Baruch described arriving back at the penthouse floor of the couple's California home, where he too had an apartment. Once there, he found shattered glass and wine splashed on the walls and pooled on the floor. A friend of Heard's, Josh Drew, opened the door to him, saying that it had been a rough night. The following morning, Baruch told the court in Fairfax, Virginia, that he was with Heard, Drew, and a man in black, which is strangely mysterious detail to add in there. Later, when he asked the actress what happened, she replied, "Johnny came by last night and he got violent, so I'm changing the locks on penthouses 1, 3, and 5. He then testified that he saw no bruises, redness, or swelling on Heard, and she was not wearing makeup. He told the court, I say, Amber, he hit you? And she says, yeah, he threw a phone at me and hit me. And I go, where? She puts her head out to show me the right eye of her face. I inspect her face. I don't see anything. I don't see a cut, bruise, swelling, redness. It's just Amber's face. It sounds nuts. He said later that he saw on the internet a photo of her with injuries on her cheeks. So a lot of information there that doesn't seem to add up depending on the story. And we've also got just live updates from the trial from The Independent, which actually, for once, seems to have some relatively interesting stuff going on this, at least in terms of the live updates. So apparently Johnny Depp once called Amber Heard a C-word and referred to her rotting corpse in a text to a friend, which doesn't sound great, does it?
That is pretty incriminating.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good, does it? Depp's sister also said that Amber Heard called him old and fat, and that the actor's family was devastated at his marriage to her. So please don't marry this crazy woman. Heard's attorney, Elaine Bradenhoff, claimed that Depp sexually assaulted Heard using a liquor bottle during a blackout drunk episode, and this is the first time that Heard has publicly alleged that Depp sexually assaulted her. The legal team representing Johnny Depp in the defamation case against his ex-wife Amber Heard has made their opening statements, with Mr. Depp's attorneys painting Heard as a compulsive and chronic liar who used the allegations she made against the actor as a means to advance her own career. They claim she wanted to portray herself as a heroic survivor of abuse, and the attorneys also noted Depp's drug and alcohol use, but argued that a substance abuse problem does not prove that he ever actually hurt Amber Heard, which is also true. They'll have to actually prove any of that stuff. There's also, just interestingly enough, an accusation between both of them that apparently one of them crapped the bed.
I've heard about this, yeah.
And each of them is accusing the other of having done it.
They've not heard of whoever smelt it, dealt it.
Whoever pointed out first, that's the legal standard we're going by now.
Yeah. If we can't have that legally entrenched, I don't know what we can.
Yeah, but obviously, by the sounds of that, it does sound like a very public filth-slinging match against one another, which isn't going to end great for either of them. But I think knowing the truth will be interesting, and it'll also, I think this is kind of the tail end of that original Me Too movement. So it'll kind of put a nice bow on it, whether a lot of those allegations from people like Amber Heard were true or not in the first place, which is what a lot of people in the culture war have been arguing about. But despite all of that, despite the context, despite the fact that he himself seems to care somewhat about the culture war, Piers Morgan never misses the opportunity to reveal himself as a retard. New York Post, memo to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Shut up, you deluded, self-obsessed, whiny, spoiled wastrels. What are you most worried about right now? The rocketing inflation that's causing such financial heartache for millions of families across America? The terrible war in Ukraine that's led to such devastating misery for the poor people being terrorized by genocidal monster Vladimir Putin? The deadly coronavirus pandemic still fueling so much death and torment? Are you living in England anymore, Piers? We've been over it for the past few months, to be perfectly honest. But apparently Piers is still locked up in his attic, scared out of his wits. Or perhaps you're reeling in shock and fear from the horrifying attack on a Brooklyn subway. There are so many things to be genuinely concerned about in our turbulent world, but bottom of my list, perhaps even lower than that, is the state of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's broken marriage. So
he's talking about it as if they want to be at each other's throats, like...
Yeah.
Well, maybe Amber Heard does.
And he's talking about it like somebody asked him to give his opinion on it. You don't have to tune in or write about it at all if you don't want to, Piers. If you don't care, you don't have to so obviously and publicly care about it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants their marriage to collapse in a really public way where they're being accused of being a sexual assaulter and bed soiler. Among other things.
But for someone who supposedly actually cares about the culture war somewhat, at least from what he's stated, it seems that he doesn't actually really care about the culture war when there's whataboutisms going on.
I think Piers Morgan cares about whatever benefits Piers Morgan's bank account.
Oh, I'd absolutely say so. And this seems to just be a way for Piers to demonstrate that, don't you understand that I care? I care ever so much. Well, I don't care about you, Piers, so if you could shut up for once, that would be greatly appreciated. And with the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard feuds and trials still ongoing, I guess we'll have to wait and see what goes on there. Thank you for watching, and if you appreciated that segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters, you can support us and find more at lotuseaters.com. For example, this latest premium book club that I did with Callum on Mao's Cultural Revolution by Frank Dicotta. If you'd like to know more about Callum and follow him anywhere, you can go on Getter and follow him at Callum. Thank you and goodbye.